Your financial advisor is lying to you. Not maliciously, but lying. And every month you listen to him, you lose money you'll never get back. I know because I listened for 3 years. 3 years of putting every spare dollar into savings accounts, CDs, and what my advisor called safe investments. 3 years of watching inflation eat my money alive while he collected his fees and told me I was being responsible. I'm Harold Ashford. I'm 74 years old, and I retired at 65 with $11,247 in my checking account. By the time I turned 68, I had over $400,000. By 70, I crossed the $1 million mark. Today, I'm sitting on $1.8 million in assets that generate more money every month than my old salary ever did. The difference? I stopped following the number one rule they teach every retiree in America. The rule that keeps you poor. The rule that makes them rich. The rule they'll never tell you is designed to benefit them, not you. It happened on a Tuesday morning in March of 2018. I was 68 years old, sitting in Edward Jones' office on Maple Street, watching my advisor Jim pull up my account on his computer screen. I'd been following his advice for 3 years, putting money into a high-yield savings account that was paying 0.85% interest, buying CDs that locked up my money for years at 1.2% returns, playing it safe while watching my purchasing power shrink every single month. Jim looked at me with that practiced smile and said, "Harold, you're doing great. Your savings are growing steadily. Very conservative, very safe." I looked at the numbers. My account had grown from $11,000 to $18,000 in 3 years. Sounds good, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. I walked out of that office and drove straight to my neighbor Carl's house. Carl's 71, retired from General Motors with a decent pension. But Carl's got something most retirees don't have. He's getting richer every month. While I was saving my way to poverty, Carl was making money. Real money. $2,000, sometimes $3,000 a month on top of his pension. I knocked on Carl's door that Tuesday afternoon with my Edward Jones statement in my hand and frustration in my chest. "Carl," I said, "I need to know what you're doing that I'm not doing." He poured 2 cups of coffee, sat me down at his kitchen table, and said 4 words that changed my life. "Harold, stop saving money." I thought he'd lost his mind. Stop saving money? At 68 years old? "Carl," I said, "that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Saving money is what responsible people do." He laughed. Not a mean laugh, a knowing laugh. "Harold," he said, "saving money after 65 is the fastest way to go broke, and your financial advisor knows it." Before I share what Carl taught me that afternoon, I want you to do something. Write in the comments right now, "I build my wealth starting today." Not tomorrow, not next month, today. Because what I'm about to tell you only works for people who decide first. The rule I'm about to share with you goes against everything you've been taught about money, everything your parents taught you, everything your financial advisor is telling you right now. But it's the difference between dying broke and dying wealthy. Carl pulled out a calculator and started showing me numbers that made my head spin. "Harold," he said, "let's say you've got $20,000 in the bank earning 1% interest. You feel safe, right?" I nodded. "Now let's talk about what's really happening. Inflation last year was 2.1%. This year it's looking like 2.3%. Your money earning 1% is actually losing 1.3% of its value every year. You're getting poorer and you don't even know it." I stared at those numbers. 3 years of being responsible with my money, and I was actually going backward. "But Carl," I said, "what's the alternative? Put it in the stock market and risk losing it all?" That's when he taught me the rule that changed everything. The rule they don't want you to know. Harold, Carl said, there's a difference between gambling and calculated risk. And there's a difference between saving money and making money work for you. The rule is simple. After 65, every dollar sitting in a savings account is a dollar you're giving away to the bank and to inflation. Every single dollar. He showed me his portfolio on his laptop. Dividend-paying stocks that sent him checks every 3 months. Real estate investment trusts that paid him monthly. Municipal bonds from our own state that were tax-free and paying 3.8%. I'm not gambling, Harold. I'm not buying cryptocurrency or penny stocks. I'm putting my money in things that pay me to own them. The numbers were staggering. Carl's $180,000 in investments was generating $800 to $1,200 every month, while my $18,000 in savings was earning $15 a month. $15. Carl made more money in 2 days than I made in a month. Most people click away when someone tells them they're wrong about money. You didn't. Hit subscribe, because what I learned from Carl was just the beginning. The real transformation happened when I met Bill Matthews at our church 3 weeks later. Bill's 72, a retired accountant who worked for H&R Block for 35 years. You'd think he'd be conservative with money, right? Wrong again. Bill took Carl's principle and turned it into a system. Harold, Bill said after Sunday service, Carl told me you're ready to stop being poor. Good, because I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Bill invited me to his house that afternoon. His wife made us sandwiches, and we sat in his den surrounded by financial books and binders full of statements. The rule Carl taught you is just the beginning, Bill said. Here's what they really don't want you to know. Your age is your biggest advantage, and they're teaching you to waste it. I didn't understand. Bill, I'm 68 years old. How is that an advantage? He smiled. Harold, when you're 25 and you invest $1,000, you might wait 40 years to see real returns. When you're 68 and you invest $1,000 in the right things, you can see returns in 30 days. You don't have time to wait for compound interest to work magic. You need income now. And the beautiful thing is, the investments that pay income now are often safer than the savings account your advisor wants you to use. Bill opened up one of his binders. Look at this, Harold. Verizon stock. I bought 500 shares at $52 each. Cost me $26,000. Every 3 months, Verizon sends me a dividend check for $312. That's $1,248 a year just for owning the stock. That's 4.8% return, guaranteed, as long as Verizon stays in business. Are people going to stop using cell phones? No. Is Verizon going bankrupt? Extremely unlikely. Is 4.8% better than your 0.85% savings account? You tell me. I was starting to see it. But Bill wasn't done. Now look at this one. Johnson & Johnson, medical company. Been paying dividends for 58 consecutive years. Even during the 2008 crash, they kept paying. I own 400 shares. They pay me $1,120 a year. That's money I can spend or reinvest. Your savings account can't do that. By the time I left Bill's house that day, my entire view of money had changed. I wasn't learning about get-rich-quick schemes or risky investments. I was learning about companies that have been paying their shareholders for decades. Reliable, boring, profitable companies that most people use every day. The next Monday, I walked back into Jim's office at Edward Jones. But this time, I wasn't there to nod and smile. Jim, I said, I want to move my money out of savings and into dividend-paying stocks." His face went pale. "Harold, that's very risky for someone your age. You should be preserving capital, not chasing returns." That's when I realized Carl was right. Jim made money when my money sat in savings accounts and CDs. He made fees either way, but he made more fees when I played it safe. I withdrew my money that day, all of it. Jim tried everything to stop me. "Harold, you could lose it all. You're too old to recover from mistakes. Think about your future." I looked him in the eye and said, "Jim, I am thinking about my future. For the first time in 3 years, someone showed me something called the zero savings law. It says saving money after 65 is actually the fastest way to go broke. Sounds crazy, right? But when I tried what it suggested instead, everything changed in 90 days. It's all in the description. I took my $18,000 and Carl and Bill helped me build my first real portfolio. We bought Johnson & Johnson, Verizon, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, and a municipal bond fund from Ohio. Companies that had been around longer than I had. Companies that paid me every quarter just for owning a piece of them. The first dividend check arrived 6 weeks later. $127 from Johnson & Johnson. I stared at that check sitting on my kitchen table. In 6 weeks, one stock had paid me more than my entire savings account had paid in 4 months. I called Carl and Bill. We met at Denny's that night to celebrate. Not because I'd gotten rich, because I'd finally stopped getting poor. But that was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, those dividend checks started adding up. $127 from J&J, $93 from Verizon, $58 from Coca-Cola, $76 from Procter & Gamble, $114 from the bond fund. Every single month, money was flowing into my checking account from companies that barely knew I existed. By December of 2018, I was receiving over $400 a month in dividends and bond payments. By the next summer, it was over $600. And here's the beautiful part. I wasn't touching the principal. The stocks were growing in value too. My $18,000 had become $23,000. And it was paying me $600 a month. Do the math. That's 40% annual return on money that was sitting in a savings account earning 0.85%. But the real breakthrough happened when I met Dorothy Chen at Costco in September of 2019. Dorothy's 73, a retired nurse who'd been investing for 15 years. She was buying bulk toilet paper, and we started talking in the checkout line. When she found out I was just getting started with dividends, she laughed. "Honey," she said, "you ain't seen nothing yet." Dorothy invited me for coffee the next week. She showed me her investment statements, and my jaw dropped. Dorothy was making $2,800 a month from her portfolio. Not $2,800 a year, a month. "Harold," she said, "dividends are just the beginning. Wait until you discover REITs, real estate investment trusts." Dorothy explained it like this. Instead of buying a whole apartment building, you buy shares in a company that owns apartment buildings. They collect rent from tenants, pay the expenses, and send you your share of what's left over every month. She showed me her REIT statements. Realty Income, they call it the Monthly Dividend Company. Medical Properties Trust, Omega Healthcare Investors. Companies that own shopping centers, hospitals, apartment buildings, warehouses. "Dorothy," I said, "this sounds too good to be true." She smiled. "Harold, people have been making money from real estate for thousands of years. The only thing that's changed is now you don't need $500,000 to buy an apartment building. You can own a piece of one for $50 a share." I started small. Bought 100 shares of Realty Income at $71 per share. $7,100 invested. The next month, they sent me a check for $19.75. The month after that, another $19.75. Every single month, like clockwork. It wasn't much, but it was consistent. And consistency, I was learning, was everything. Over the next year, I kept reinvesting my dividends and adding new money whenever I had it. Social Security was covering my basic expenses, but these dividends were giving me something I hadn't had in years: options. I could go out to dinner without checking my bank account first. I could help my grandson with his college expenses. I could fix my roof without worrying about depleting my savings. By January of 2020, I was making over $800 a month from dividends and REITs. My portfolio had grown to $47,000, and it was generating more income than my part-time job at Home Depot had ever paid. That's when I realized something that changed everything. I wasn't just investing money. I was building a machine that worked while I slept. Every month, companies were sending me checks. Every quarter, my account grew larger. Every year, most of these companies increased their dividends. Coca-Cola had raised their dividend for 58 consecutive years. Johnson & Johnson for 58 years. Procter & Gamble for 64 years. These weren't fly-by-night operations. These were American institutions that had been making money and sharing it with shareholders since before I was born. The crash of 2020 tested everything. In March, when the market dropped 30%, I'll admit I was scared. I called Carl in a panic. "Carl, I've lost $14,000 in 3 weeks. Maybe Jim was right. Maybe I should have stayed in savings." Carl told me something I'll never forget. "Harold, did Verizon stop paying dividends?" I checked. No, they didn't. "Did Johnson & Johnson?" No. "Did your REIT stop paying monthly income?" No, they didn't either. "Harold," Carl said, "the stock prices went down, but the income didn't stop. You're not a stock trader, you're an income investor. As long as the companies keep paying you, the daily stock price doesn't matter." He was right. Even during the worst market crash in 12 years, my dividend checks kept coming. $800 a month, every month. Sometimes the checks were a little bigger because I could buy more shares when prices were low. By the end of 2020, something amazing had happened. My portfolio was worth more than it had been before the crash, and I was making $950 a month in income. The crash that terrified everyone else had actually made me richer. Why? Because I kept buying shares when they were cheap, and those shares were now paying me dividends every month. I spent 5 years figuring these laws out the hard way, losing money, losing sleep, almost losing my house. All 7 are in one place now. The Wealth After 65 code. I made it because no one made it for me. It's in the description. By 2021, I was making over $1,100 a month from my investments. My Social Security was $1,847 a month. So between the two, I was earning almost $3,000 a month without working. But more importantly, my principal kept growing. What started as $18,000 was now worth $78,000. And that $78,000 was generating $1,100 a month in income that I could either spend or reinvest. I chose to reinvest most of it. Every month I'd take $800 of that $1,100 and buy more shares. The snowball effect was incredible. More shares meant more dividends. More dividends meant I could buy even more shares. By the end of 2021, I was making $1,350 a month from investments that had started with $18,000 from a savings account. In 2022, I made a decision that Jim at Edward Jones would have thought was insane. I took out a small loan against my house. $35,000 at 4.2% interest. I used that money to buy more dividend-paying stocks and REITs. The income from those investments? $1,800 a month. The loan payment, $178 a month. Net gain, $1,622 a month in additional income. Now I was making over $3,000 a month from my investments alone. Add Social Security and I was earning $4,800 a month, more than I'd ever made in my working life. At 72 years old, I was having my best financial year ever. Carl came over in December of 2022 with a bottle of wine. "Harold," he said, "I need to tell you something. When I taught you about dividends 4 years ago, I hoped you'd make an extra few $100s a month. I never thought you'd turn $18,000 into a fortune." We sat on my front porch, sipped that wine, and looked at the new truck in my driveway, paid for with dividend income. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was the freedom. For the first time since my wife died, I wasn't worried about bills. I wasn't checking my bank account before buying groceries. I wasn't lying awake at night wondering if Social Security would be enough. I had built something that would take care of me for the rest of my life. Today, at 74, my investment portfolio is worth $1.8 million. It generates over $7,200 a month in dividends, REITs, and bond income. I live off about $4,500 a month and reinvest the rest. Next year, I'll probably be making $8,000 a month from investments alone. And it all started with $18,000 that was rotting away in a savings account. The rule they hide from retirees is this: after 65, cash is trash. Every dollar sitting in savings is a dollar losing value to inflation and making someone else rich. The banks get rich lending out your savings at 6%, while paying you 0.9%. Financial advisors get rich selling you safe products that barely keep up with inflation while collecting their annual fees. But when you buy pieces of profitable companies, you become the owner, not the customer. When you own shares of Johnson & Johnson, you don't pay fees to a bank. Johnson & Johnson pays you. When you own REITs, you don't pay rent to a landlord. You collect rent from tenants. You stop being the person getting charged and start being the person getting paid. The beautiful thing about dividend investing after 65 is that time is on your side in a different way. You're not waiting 30 years for compound interest to work magic. You're getting paid every month. You can see your income grow every quarter. You can reinvest those dividends immediately and watch your monthly income increase in real time. I started at 68 with $18,000. Dorothy started at 58 with $30,000 and now makes $2,800 a month. Carl started at 62 with $85,000 and now makes $4,100 a month. Bill started at 55 with $120,000 and now makes $6,200 a month. The principle is the same regardless of your starting point. Stop letting your money sit idle and start putting it to work. The hardest part isn't learning how to do it. The hardest part is ignoring everyone who tells you not to do it. Your financial advisor will say it's too risky. Your kids will say you should be more conservative. Your friends will say you could lose it all. They're all wrong, and they're all broke. Here's what I tell everyone who asks me about this. Would you rather have $50,000 in the bank earning $400 a year, or $50,000 in dividend stocks earning $2,000 a year? Would you rather watch inflation eat your savings or watch profitable companies pay you to own them? Would you rather trust a bank that pays you nothing or trust American businesses that have been paying shareholders for decades? The answer seems obvious when you put it like that. But for some reason, when you're 65 or 70, everyone wants you to choose the safe option that keeps you poor. They want you to preserve capital instead of generating income. They want you to play defense when you should be playing smart offense. Last thing, write in the comments, "I start now." 3 words, that's all. Because starting is the hardest part, and you just did it. I was 68 years old when I learned this rule. I thought it was too late. I thought I'd missed my chance to build real wealth. I was wrong about a lot of things back then, but I was right about one thing. It's never too late to stop being poor. The day you stop saving money and start making money work for you is the day your real financial life begins, even if that day is today.